entrepreneurial ecosystems, discussing governance structures, financial management, and how to sustain member engagement within ecosystem. Last week, our discussion was on access to markets in Africa and beyond. We focused on challenges, opportunities, and some best practices for those who want to scale beyond where they are. We were also given strategies to access global markets through e-commerce, trade facilitation, and collaborative networks. This brings us to today's discussion. And I hope as I've been talking, you can see how each week we build upon what we discussed the previous week. So it's sort of like a foundation. You start and you keep on building. So this week, our discussion is on financing and access to capital for entrepreneurs and ecosystems. So last week, we talked about how to go beyond Africa and beyond your country and beyond Africa. So this week, we want to speak about how to get the capital to go there. We will focus on the various financing options and how, as entrepreneurs, we can access capital, including grants, loans, and crowdfunding. So we have a very robust panel. And our moderator today is one Miss Emily Manjero. Emily is a communications expert who has served as a consultant for blue chip companies and non-governmental organizations for more than 13 years. She is a former TV presenter with Shinda Washinde, a raffle charity TV program courtesy of the Kenya Red Cross. She has been a moderator and MC at various events, both virtual and in person, some of which include Women Deliver Conference side event, the UHC Day National Celebration, and most recently at the Business Week Summit held at the Sarit Center last week. Those of you who were at the Business Week Summit must have seen her in action. In May 2023, Emily was crowned triple champion of Toastmasters International District 114 speech contests. Triple champion, not one, not two, but 3 contests. She took them all. Speech contests within East Africa that covers Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Ethiopia, Rwanda, and Burundi. Now, just imagine those people who traveled all the way, and then Emily took them all. Emily has a compelling, energetic personality that drives stimulating and thought-provoking discussions. With her exceptional ability to draw people out and elicit desired responses, she makes subject matter experts feel at ease. Not only subject matter experts, even she makes me feel at ease when I'm speaking to her. So she's fiercely committed to raising awareness about the importance of delivering top-notch healthcare services to disadvantaged communities, especially in the field of surgery, anesthesia, and public health advocacy. This passion has come about due to her experience as a communications manager for Africa Smile Train, the world's largest cleft-focused organization. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for Miss Emily Manjero, our moderator for today.
Yay! Thank you, Josephine. Thank you so much, everybody. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's session of the Africa Startup Ecosystem Builders. And today, as we begin, I always like to start with an icebreaker. So I would like to share my screen, and please let me know whether you can see slido.com on your screen. Thumbs up if you can, as we begin to break the ice. I know today has been chilly. Many parts of Kenya are very, very cold. So please scan the barcode or put that hashtag on slido.com, and we can begin our session with an icebreaker really quickly before we can get into a very interactive session today. Thumbs up if you already have. I'd like to see some exciting energy in here. Thumbs up, thumbs up. I'll give you a couple of seconds to scan the barcode. Yes, number 2, number 3, nice. I like it. I like it. Okay. Yes, thank you so much, Clara, Caroline. we would love for you to share with us a couple of answers. So what is the one thing that you would like to learn today? If the question has popped up, please answer the question and the responses will come up live for our panel discussion, and we'll get to hopefully answer as many as possible. So if you have scanned, we are on slido.com. We would love to start by breaking the ice, getting to know what would you like to learn today, getting to share in our expertise. What would you like to learn? What would you like to learn? Tell us, tell us, tell us, tell us. Access to affordable financing. Thank you very much. Show me the money, show me the money. Where is the money? There is money, but where is it? Maybe you're the only one who has money, or maybe you're the only one who does not have money. What options of financing are there? What is crowdfunding and how can I benefit? I love it. Keep those responses coming. I believe my panelists are seeing these questions. What are the barriers to financing, access to affordable financing? Absolutely. I'll take one more response, and then we can go to the next question. Just one more. So we're talking about barriers, financing options, crowdfunding and its benefits. Where is the money? Where and how can I access affordable financing? Let's hear it, ladies and gentlemen. How do you access credit risk? Very interesting. Easy ways to access capital. I'll take, where to invest my money to access more money. There you go. Thank you so much for responding to that one. Let us go to the next question. The next question is one song, because it's cold, one song that lights you up when it's cold. Name the song and the artist. Name the song and the artist. Let's hear it. If it's yourself in the shower hour, it is fine. You have probably released an album in the shower. It's okay. You can be your own cheerleader. It's totally acceptable. Brighter Day by Kirk Franklin. My Kikuyu in me. I was about to break some tongues here. I Am Every Woman by Whitney Houston. Anguka nayo. Really? My fellow Kenyans, I see what you did there. Someone Like You by Adele. Fly by Nyashinsky. I like it. Very interesting taste in music in this room. I love it. Better by Liachi. This is the day the lady has made by Unknown. I know about the Lord, but the lady, this is interesting. We are making God a woman. Uptown Funk by Bruno Mars. And the last question, I promise. Okay, and the last question is, by the way, where are you joining us from? So that we know we are not talking to people in the Alps and giving them solutions for the mountains and giving them solutions for the sea. Where are you joining us from? Ngong. You could be my village mate. I see that. Very interesting. Someone is from Karinde, which is Karen End in Nairobi. Syokimau in Nairobi, in Gikiri. Lovely, 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 ladies and gentlemen. Katani, this one is stalking me. Hey, in Westlands. Anyone in Raka? Anyone in Rongai? Have you taken your visa? Are you sure? You're alive and well. Fantastic. Thank you all so much for indulging me in that quick icebreaker. Like we mentioned, today the conversation is going to be about financing and access to capital for entrepreneurs. The focus today is just exploring the various financing options that there are and discussing how to access this capital, what are some of the challenges and the barriers. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our panelists this morning, starting with Madam Elizabeth Wasuna, who is the Business Banking Director at Absa Bank PLC. She has over 25 years of experience in the banking industry. Her expertise lies in strategic leadership, SME and commercial banking, growth in Africa, ecosystem partnership development, and women in business advocacy. In her current role, Elizabeth oversees several key areas at Absa Bank Kenya, including commercial and SME banking, trade and cash management, Islamic banking, vehicle and asset finance, and agribusiness. She holds a Bachelor of Science in International Business Administration and an MBA with focus on marketing and strategic management from USIU. Ooh, alma mater. Elizabeth is also a patron member of the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and is affiliated with the Kenya Association of Manufacturers. Her accolades include being the top 10 finalist for the Angaza Awards 2020-2021, that is on the Kenya Wall Street Today, acknowledging women to watch in banking and finance in East Africa. She has been acknowledged by the Kayana News publication in Kenya in 2021 as top 10 women to watch in 2021. Clearly, this was a very good year. Finalist, she also was a finalist for the individual awards for East Africa in the Accenture 2023 in the 11th Gender Mainstreaming Awards for her significant contribution to gender mainstreaming. Ladies and gentlemen, let us celebrate Elizabeth Wasuna. Woohoo! Up next, we have Melissa Mwiti from the Graça Machel Trust. Melissa has 20 years cumulative experience in management, consulting, financial services, MSME support. She has worked with financiers and other players in the entrepreneurial ecosystem and mainly in Kenya in developing relevant capacity solutions and enterprises. Her scope of consulting assignments has covered the private sector, the government, and public-private initiatives. She has supported with development agencies. Melissa has a Bachelor of Commerce and is an MBA graduate. She is also currently pursuing her PhD in business management, arising from her interest in research that informs and supports the creation and growth of stable enterprises in developing and emerging economies. Melissa is currently the coordinator of Graça Machel Trust's Women Creating Wealth program in Kenya. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome Miss Melissa Mwiti. Yay. And last but certainly not least, the gentleman in the room, Mr. Justus Agoti, who is the Senior Manager Market Deepening at the Capital Markets Authority. Justus is an experienced capital markets expert. He has over 19 years experience in the capital markets operation and strategy specializing in research, economics, financial markets, issuer or SME capital access, strategy and product development. Currently, he is the Senior Manager for Market Deepening at the Capital Markets Authority, coordinating the product development, uptake, and innovation initiatives in the authority. Mr. Agoti is a member of various working teams, including the Market Development Committee, which evaluates current initiatives to grow the country's capital markets. Mr. Agoti has previously served as a manager, product development and uptake at CMA, coordinating the conduct of market development and research work aimed at developing new policies, systems, strategies for the better operation of Kenya's capital markets. He has also previously actively participated in the public-private partnership engagements as a resource person. He also holds an MA and a BA degree in economics from the University of Nairobi. He also has a human resource management and accounting qualifications. In addition, he has financial analyst certification as a capital market security analyst from the Corporate Finance Institute and the Institute of Certified Investments and Financial Analysts. let me tell you, the amount of expertise. Mr. Agoti is also a certified negotiator with a qualification in negotiation mastery from where? Harvard Business School. Ladies and gentlemen, that is our panel, Mr. Justus Agoti, Melissa Mwiti, and Elizabeth Wasuna. Thank you so much all for joining us. And I would like to start really quickly with Elizabeth. Please share with us, what are some of the common mistakes that SMEs make when they are coming to ask for financing at the bank?
Thank you very much, Emily. Thank you for the introduction. It's always quite daunting to hear all the accolades in the room, but I think we're in good company as it is, and really a pleasure and honor to be with the panelists in the room to just try and explain, some of the things that we see the SMEs, struggling with as they come into the bank. The truth is, the bank has always been a very structured environment where, when you're coming in for a request for a facility, there's ways that they expect, a presentation to come through. There's ways they expect, for you to present your proposals. They will expect you to present the proposals, but they also expect you to come up with risk mitigations for the risks that they see. So there's been a lot, and especially, traditionally the banks have also been, open to business for corporate business, and those are very structured, and they have a lot of support from different type of specialists to support them in being able to put together a proposal that the bank will then, look at and support. So SMEs then struggle, because this is an environment for a long time was not really enabled, to support SMEs in terms of financing. And so some of the key things that we then saw was, SMEs would come into the bank and say, yes, I need money, but not quite articulating what you need money for. I need a loan, but there are many types of funding in the bank. If you look at the working capitals, which are short-term, you look at trade finance, you look at asset finance, you look at mortgages, but you only come and ask for a loan. So the first thing that I always say is you need to be very clear on what it is that you want from the bank. And some of the information that we can be able to support, banks are able to support today. And I always say this is the biggest secret for most organizations. If a startup wants to come in and looking for funding, walk into the bank and have a conversation with the bankers. Ask them all the questions, tell them what you want to do. Chances are they'll give you a fair view. It is like a marking scheme on what you need to provide so that you can be able to go and prepare your proposal, as opposed to preparing your proposal and then coming to the bank and finding that you're not in tandem in terms of the product you want, the language you're using, how to mitigate the risks, perhaps even what you need for security. And that's another big issue, because a lot of security, SMEs do not have security to be able to support their facilities. So it is important that, first and foremost, find out, get the information, have conversations with different, organizations. Today, we're very lucky as SMEs, and I say this openly because a lot of organizations are taking entrepreneurs through training. Whether it's online, whether it is physical. There's a lot of training from different associations, Kenya Chamber of Commerce, National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Kenya Association of Manufacturers, KEPSA. There's a lot of information out there. The question is how are you able to plug in to get the information to enable you then coming to the organization or to the banks to start having those conversations. I also say the biggest enabler for an SME is get the information. There's a lot of information out there, and then tag it to the bank, see how they will respond to it before you need it, because when you need it, sometimes there's a desperation around the timelines for which to turn around. So, and I see a lot of frustrations with SMEs coming to the bank and saying, I need money, but I need money tomorrow because I now have to pay for my Mzigo that has come in. I now need to pay for this, and there's a time element. I would say the bigger and a struggle is just making sure that you prepare in advance for funding. It might not always be the solution, but I think it's important to prepare in advance for that. So typically, issues are around your books, making sure that they're prepared, making sure you have your cash flows, making sure you have a view of how you use your money in and out of the account, whether it's M-Pesa, whether it is your cooperative statements, whether it is your bank statements. Just have a view of where your money, how your money goes in and out. I would say also have a preliminary view of how your books look like. And I'm not saying anything complicated, but just have a view also of how that money goes in and out, how you pay your workers, how you pay yourself if you're paying yourself, how you keep track of your expenses, where is your money going and how is it coming through? So those are critical things, even as you come into the bank. And today we're lucky that the banks are opening up to being able to support SMEs by not necessarily asking them for complicated documents. But the critical piece, first and foremost, is just to be able to see how your money is going in and out and how you actually articulate yourself around your ideas. So typically, if you're in a business, make sure you understand the struggles of that business, make sure you understand how you will mitigate them. So that when you're having a conversation, it is not to say, this is my plan now and I'm dying with it. If there's something wrong with it, if the environment, like you see, is a very volatile one, how do you then mitigate those risks and be able to support it? Because by and large, as you know, banks are holding funds on behalf of shareholders. So we need to always be careful about how we lend money out. I would say those are some of the things that, SMEs struggle with, amongst other things, because, SMEs, if you're a woman, you struggle with even more issues because, there's a bias around that. SMEs, if you're young, again, there's a bias against it. So there are very many issues, but I think those are some of the core issues that we see from where we sit in the bank. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. I have picked quite a number of reasons there. Have a conversation, have your books ready, have everything in check. At the very minimum, come in ready to learn even about yourself and where you want to go. I like that. And that segues, you have mentioned something very interesting that I will segue to Melissa. Tell us a little bit about the Graça Machel Trust. And I know that it only focuses on women through the Women Creating Wealth program. Tell us a little more about that.
Thank you very much, Emily. Just confirming you can hear me clearly.
Yes, loud and clear.
Yeah. So it's my pleasure to be here today, and just like Elizabeth said, a great pleasure to be here with the rest of the panel. Really experienced and just happy to share from my experience as well, working with SMEs and businesses, especially at the early stage, what we call the early stage of the life cycle of business. So coming back to Graça Machel Trust, the organization or the trust was formed 23 years ago in 2010. And its primary mission is to advance women's economic and social standing and focus and also support adolescent girls. So one thing we like to say about Graça Machel Trust is we seek to multiply faces and amplify voices. So Graça Machel Trust focuses a lot on advocacy, on research, on networking, just to find out what issues women are grappling with at the social and economic level, and see how to influence decision makers to create a better environment now for women and girls. And one of the ways that Graça Machel Trust does this is working with partners, and some who may be top of mind for many in Africa, the MasterCard Foundation, Visa Foundation, African Development Bank, Industrial Development Corporation, among others. So that's just largely what Graça Machel Trust does. And coming down to now women economic social advancement, we have our entrepreneurship development program called Women Creating Wealth. And I think when you introduced me, you mentioned that I coordinate activities in Kenya for this program. So Women Creating Wealth is a capacity building program or an accelerator for women-led enterprises. So there may be men in management or in the shareholding, but largely is women-led, or women have a significant aspect of decision-making in the company, or in the organization. So we look at offering coaching, mentorship, training around business skills, and business topics, all the way from marketing to finance, systems, operations, just as you have in a typical capacity building program. But we also look at just something around personal development. So we call it personal mastery and leadership, where we want to meet the women entrepreneurs where they are. So even before we go into the technical aspects of business around markets and financials, we go back to look at how well are you balancing the demands as a woman in business. We look at topics around emotional intelligence, just the things we know are very personal and very specific or unique to women. And, because we say if the entrepreneur or if the woman in this case is okay, then her business will be okay. So apart from taking the women through the business topics and the personal mastery and leadership, then we go a step further and bring on the aspect of access to markets, where we'd like the businesses to be able to extend or expand what we do, either at a local or regional or even international level. And we also look at access to finance, which is really big and I think is an important part of the discussion today. So there's a lot of preparation for the businesses to be ready to meet different categories of financiers. So Elizabeth has talked about what the bank would be looking at, the gaps that these entrepreneurs face, or the gaps they have seen with these entrepreneurs as they come maybe to apply for loans. So now our role is to make sure that by the time these entrepreneurs are going to meet these financiers, whether banks or venture capital firms, for example, they are prepared. They know what the financiers are looking for. They have already established what the gap in their financing is, how they will apply the money, and how they will use it. So in a nutshell, or just in summary, that's what we do at Graça Machel Trust. And now coming down to the Women Creating Wealth program.
Thank you, Melissa. I like that there's a lot of emphasis on especially EQ, so that you are able to get to the next levels of preparation and being ready for yourself and ready for the market. So you are ready, you're feeling good, you're trained, and one of the places that you want to go for financing is in the capital markets. Mr. Justus Agoti, please tell us some of the balance that you have seen when it comes to accessing financing through the capital markets. What are some of the opportunities that you would avail for any young entrepreneur or even for the marginalized? You're muted.
For once, I thought that my mic was on. I hope you can hear me.
Loud and clear. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I was saying thank you very much for this opportunity to have a conversation on financing. I saw the questions that were being asked on Slido, and it took me back that, the same issues that have been affecting SMEs for a while now are the same issues we continue to grapple with. So just to take you back a bit, CMA is a regulator, the Capital Markets Authority. It regulates the capital markets industry, similar to, when you have central bank regulating the banking sector, or insurance regulatory authority regulating the insurance sector and such like. You also have, institutions like RBA, which regulate issues to do with retirement benefits. So what does CMA do? CMA regulates a number of players, because capital markets are a whole ecosystem which supports access to financing, because as you may be aware, there are always two parties to a transaction. There is the person who has the funds, and there is the person who requires the funds. And I had Elizabeth here talking about the banking sector and what it does. I think we are so very closely related as institutions because we belong to the same financial sector. The only difference being, how long is one wanting to access capital? So for capital markets, we are usually focused on people who want to access capital for more than 1 year, as opposed to the banking sector where access is usually for 1 year or less. Of course, over time, Elizabeth's team has gone into 3 years, 4 years, which is, we are comfortable with that. But ideally, the banking sector usually looks at a period that is a bit shorter compared to what capital markets look at. So what are the key instruments we have within capital markets? So majorly, we have what we call bonds. We also have equity or shares, if you like. So just to dig a little deeper for you to understand, if I want to borrow money, assume that I want to borrow money from Elizabeth today, if it is through capital markets, there is some documentation you prepare to support that. And of course, the relationship is I'm borrowing money from someone, so I'll have to pay back with some top up to take account of the fact that I've taken their money for a period, so that they get a return given that they have lent me money, for example. And that is essentially what the bond does. The advantage of it is that you get a fixed, usually, you get a fixed return over a period. So for example, currently, the government has been borrowing funds from our market, and the average rate is around 17%. There was a recent issuance of what we are calling an infrastructure bond. So the government in this case is an issuer, and it has been wanting to access funding, and it does that through capital markets on a monthly basis. There are, of course, advantages and disadvantages of that, but just quickly linking it up with the SME sector. As an SME, you have a leeway within capital markets to borrow funds from stakeholders, because in capital markets, we have retail investors, we also have institutional investors, and those are the people that can actually be able to give you money, or can I say lend you money. Of course, it's through an arrangement in which you have a group of investors who are keen in investing in your SME. You prepare documentation, bring it to CMA, we consider that documentation. If you have all the systems and everything that is required according to the regulations, then we say go to the market and raise the funding you require. And it's usually within a span of time. So for those who are asking, how can I access funding or how can I access financing? We have capital markets, and most of those who come to capital markets actually raise funds in the billions. Now, we recently have a framework that actually supports raising capital, which never used to happen, because when you come to our market, when you're an SME previously, it was a challenge. You would come fast, you try to discover the price of the shares of your company before you raise capital. But now it's actually possible for you to come and immediately raise capital, and you don't need to have what I can call a credit history that is profitable, right? So we have loosened up the rules, realizing that the market is a bit challenged as we speak. So it's possible to raise funds through a bond. What you only need to do is put together the documentation. One advantage we have is that we don't require collateral. Yeah? The only collateral we require of you is putting that documentation that will act as a document that investors will trust, or those who want to lend you money will trust as the basis of lending you money. And of course, CMA is standing in between to ensure that you don't go back on what you have promised. The second instrument would be equities. And in equities, you become a part shareholder in an SME when you invest in it, as opposed to a bond where the relationship ends once a repayment is made. I'm just hoping that I'm clarifying that. So in summary, it's actually possible, and we have quite a number of provisions that one needs to meet in order for them to access capital markets. Of course, enabled by technology, because we are transitioning very quickly into technology, and you just need to be aware as to how that can happen. Awareness is a key issue. Of course, there's the cost of access. We are trying to address that through technology. And then you also need to be aware of what are the alternatives. Of course, we have the banking sector. You can also use friends to borrow from. You can use capital markets. You can win a lottery if you are able to be lucky. All those are alternatives. So it's for you to have access to all this information and consider it and see where can I get the lowest cost in terms of accessing the capital. So alternatives are there. You only need to be hungry for the information. So then ultimately you can access the capital you want.
I love it. Thank you so much for that. In fact, you've raised a very interesting topic there, which is the different ways that SMEs can access financing, crowdfunding, there's lotteries, now that we are seeing that there's many of those coming up. So this question would go to Elizabeth. How do those different ways compare to traditional models of accessing financing?
Interesting question. And Emily, the truth is there's so much out there today. There's so many ways of being able to access financing, the non-traditional way, because the traditional way has been through the banks. That's what we've known in the domain, the environment that we have. But today, through the use of peer-to-peer funding, where people are, investors get individual investors to come and support them, is another way that a lot of investors are going through. There's a crowdfunding that you've mentioned, which is a key, another way of being able to get funding. And I say this all because they're all ways of being able to access financing. There's angel investors, what they call, people who are more patient in terms of being able to provide you with financing. And then, of course, there's still banks that are now open to business in terms of being able to give unsecured financing. A different way of being able to finance SMEs, basically because of, where we find ourselves. But the reason why I say there's so many ways, the important thing for for SMEs and startups is that we need to understand the different ways of being able to fund a business, so that when you finally need it, then you know where to go. Again, a lot of the times, SMEs struggle because you are between a rock and a hard place, and now you have to be able to, access funding from the person who's willing to give it to you at whatever cost. And that, of course, is so difficult for a business because, for instance, and I don't say it badly, because Shylocks do have their places and times and I guess their space in the environment because they are used. That's a fact of the matter. But the truth is, if you are not aware of, the costs of the funding that you're getting, the patience that the funder has, the strength in terms of, the length of time that you're given to repay, the flexibility of being able to reschedule some of those facilities, then the funding in itself may not necessarily be the one that you choose because you're under pressure may not be the right one. So my encouragement to the SMEs and startups is you must be able to, as you're planning your business, know, for instance, go into great detail about the different ways of funding. There probably will be, there are many hundreds of them, but the thing is, pick 5 that you think, I will align with the business based on costs, tenors, flexibility, patience in terms of being able to allow you to operate your business, especially in difficult environments such as this. I say this because today we've gone through very turbulent environment, for instance, where we have, the floods, you have the protests that have affected businesses one way or the other. Of course, we've had COVID and we've had all these disruptions. Now you can imagine if the person who's funding you comes back and says, I don't care, you have to pay me. It doesn't matter what it is, you have to pay me. And those are some of the contractual agreements we go into simply because at the time at which you want the funding, you want it so badly. And therefore you contract on terms that are not necessarily favorable for businesses and especially SMEs. So I would say again, test at least 5 different types of sourcing of funding. I've mentioned some of them. There's a lot of them also that are available. Just even if you Google, I can assure you Google has a lot of information and a view. But then also engage with the organizations that are willing to give you more in terms of how to use them, what kind of questions to ask them, how do you engage? Because the truth is, if you don't have the information upfront, when you're not under pressure, then you find yourself in a very difficult situation. I say this also because we have the platforms, the different, mobile platforms that give you quick money. But again, at that point, most of them do not ask what's the interest rate. and what are the repercussions of a delay. And sometimes those are quite punitive and can actually affect the business. So, Emily, the truth is there are many, but the truth is also there are ways of being able to manage this. One of the things, a key thing that any business must be able to do, startups, SMEs, I know it's difficult for a lot of business who are already running the course of time, but we must engage in getting information so that you can be able to make the decisions that support your business through good times, but also through turbulent times as we see ourselves facing today.
I like that. We'll come back to a point that you have raised, especially about unsecured financing. And you've raised a very, very sensitive point, especially on the level of preparedness of a business to access financing, because there's a level of readiness that you need to. So Melissa, this question goes to you. When you want to make a compelling pitch as an entrepreneur, what are some of the things that you need to make sure that you are presenting to your financier?
Okay, thank you, Emily. And just to confirm, I saw someone on the chat saying they couldn't hear me clearly. So please feel free to stop me when that happens, and I can switch gadgets.
Okay.
So yeah, this is one area we are very passionate about. Earlier in the introduction, I talked about investor or finance readiness. That one of our objectives or key outcomes of what we do is to see that the entrepreneur is ready to meet the financier, that they have the right information, they've packaged it well, as you've said, and usually you find this is contained in a pitch deck. So why is it called a pitch deck? I think some of the background came from just thinking, if you think of a deck of cards, if you have 5 cards, what is contained, in each of those. So a pitch deck, we like to say is, first of all, the entrepreneur needs to know that it's their story that they are telling. They know that story the best way. So the reason we are bringing in the pitch deck is to be structure around which to present your business to the other party who is, a financier, whatever category of financier that would be. And sometimes these financiers would specify the kind of information they need, but usually there are certain elements of a pitch deck that we say at least have those ones in place. If you need to add or remove 1 or 2, it's important to have those ones. So so we start with, and it's more like a flow. It's like you're building a story. It's a step-by-step approach. So first, in trying to understand what you do as a business, what your products are, we say, what problem are you trying to solve? And what solution are you bringing? Because your product or service is addressing something, or ideally is addressing a gap in the market, a gap in the environment, a gap in the industry that you're playing. So even before you come into describing what that product is it clear what gap it's it's trying to face? So like the way you ask, what is the problem? This is the solution, and the solution is this is my product. This is how I describe my product. And something we like to say is in the financial circle sometimes, for example, you could be having a very technical product. Yeah, maybe you're in the science and research. So the question is, can you explain it to a 10-year-old? Would you be able to explain your product to a 10-year-old, what you do? And you can't always assume that everybody listening to what you have understands what you do. Yeah. So a problem, a solution, then you describe your product or your service. It's also important to describe the market opportunity. Yeah, because even as you go to a financier, they'll want to know, okay, we want to work with you, we want to grow with you. How does this market look? Is it big? Is there potential? And then as you define that, you specify on who your target is. Who is this person that's going to be buying your product, and can they afford it? And this is where we talk about things like market segmentation. You know, are you selling to the upper market? Are you selling to the bottom of the pyramid? Have you established those parameters? And then who is maybe your existing or potential competition? You know, you could be a new business, a startup, but it's important for you to know who else is doing what you do in this space. Yeah. And then we say the financier wants to know how far you've come. What's your track record? From the time you started business to this time, in terms of financials, how have you grown? Maybe in terms of number of customers, number of products that you're selling. You know, you want to tell the story from maybe the time you started to date. And let me just say that for a pitch deck, each of those items are saying usually would be on one slide. So, and the idea is that you just put a very precise information that helps you talk through the slides. Then we have the financial information that your financier is interested to know how you performed historically and how you're looking at going forward, what we call projections. And with the projections, they want to see what's the basis. Like if I say I'm moving from 5 million shillings in 2024 to 10 million shillings in 2025, I need to be able to explain how that will happen. You know, it's not just picking figures from the air, but I need to have a basis. So what we call sound assumptions. And then now there's a big push towards impact. So what impact metrics do you anticipate that your business is going to satisfy? Usually those are aligned to the Sustainable Development Goals. If you know some of them, you can state them. And then we want to know who your team is, the key members of your team, because if you're talking to a financier about growing, they want to know, is this the team that will take the business forward? Because at the end of this deck, you'll ask for some money. So they want to know, is this the team that is well qualified to take this business ahead? Yeah. And then we say risk assessment. Have you thought about the risks that your business is likely to face, and how have you proposed to mitigate on this risk? And then finally, like I said, you have the ask, or what you want these financiers to invest in the business. How much is it? What will it be for? Maybe I want 5 million shillings. 2 million of that is to buy a machine. 1 million maybe is to buy stocks, and the rest of it you just break down and show the investor how you use that money. So like I said, it's important for the entrepreneur to know that it's their story. What the pitch deck is doing, it's giving structure to make sure you present key aspects of your business that investors or financiers would really want to know. Yeah, so that's what I would say about the elements of a pitch deck.
I see. That is almost like watching Shark Tank, where you
Yes.
have this amount of ask that you want, and this is the problem that you want to solve. This is how
Yes.
you're going to solve it. This is the strategy. This is the money. And we've seen very interesting ones that have come. But then let's go to the flip side, where there's the regulations. There's the rules that must apply when you are asking for financing, and especially when it comes to the challenges that are associated with the market conditions. Elizabeth has alluded to it, Justus has mentioned it at some point. Let us understand a little bit about how economic conditions such as the interest rates that keep fluctuating from time to time can affect how a business can access capital. Because assuming I am just starting out and I'm feeling overwhelmed by all this information, and then I'm seeing interest rates are spiking left, right, and center, Justus, please give a better guidance on how, when you are asking for financing, how do these rates affect a business when they are finding capital?
Yeah, there is quite a bit of impact. Yeah, because you see, it all boils down to what is the cost of capital. And as an SME, that's a key issue to look at. Otherwise, you'll be making losses at the end of the day, and that's what you don't want. So just for information, they say inflation is the persistent rise in the price of commodities. So for example, we have what we call the general cost of borrowing within the market. In our case in Kenya, central bank usually pronounces itself on what the cost of borrowing will be between the central bank and commercial banks. That spills itself over into the market, and it determines at what interest rate are banks going to lend to the wider public. And if you extend it further, the rate at which, for example, an SME is going to borrow at has to take account of all those factors, including inflation. And inflation usually is a component that adds up to the cost of borrowing. So if, for example, an SME wanted to borrow funds, maybe the target was 13%, it has to add an inflation component of, say, 2-3%, depending on how the market is, or can I say how the economy is. So it's a big factor that ultimately determines what decision is going to be made. In fact, for our market, I think the current rates should be anything between maybe 19 and maybe up to 25%. I think Elizabeth is better placed to tell us what is the rate in the banking sector. It's a key issue for our market. Although, of course, people have been saying there's a time in Kenya when interest rates were in the 80%. I don't know whether 1980s or 90s, which is something very prohibitive. But generally speaking, I think best would be to look at, so what options do I have? And I think I go back to the various alternatives that people have, so that you can compare, which then means today's source of financing for you may not necessarily be the same tomorrow. And as we said, awareness is a very central factor here. Once you're aware that, for example, the banking sector, and even within the banking sector, different commercial banks are offering loans at different rates. If you come to capital markets, there is what I could call the pitch deck, similar to what Melissa has already indicated, and we call it an information memorandum, which is a document detailing who you are, where you are from, what business you do, what risks you're facing, what are your financials, so then that document can be used as your pledge on what you're going to do. Can I call it a promise if you are given the funds you are trying to access? But also coming to the other factors around what affects borrowing and the cost of accessing capital by SMEs. There's also the issue around foreign currency fluctuation. A lot of SMEs import some of their inputs that are used in either manufacturing or even as a finished product. Ultimately, a very small change in the Kenya shilling versus the foreign currencies, be it the euro, the USD, or whichever other, has a serious impact on the cost at which the SME is going to get that currency. Ultimately, the cost at which it's going to sell its final product. What needs to be done is to be very consistent in informing the key stakeholders that the very fact that there are very slight changes in the business environment has a huge impact on what is happening in terms of business activity, especially for SMEs, because the access capital is already a challenge. And then there's an additional cost that comes in with either interest rate fluctuation or foreign currency or other factors that are beyond the control of the SME, but within the control of government. So those are issues that perhaps even as SME founders, aviation, and other players will need to keep knocking that door and saying, yes, we understand, of course, government wants to raise revenue, but the environment has to be very favorable for business to thrive. For big companies, perhaps sometimes they can take up some of that cost, but for SMEs, you're trying to leapfrog yourself so then you can get where the big companies are before you can also be comfortable. Ultimately, a lot of discussions and advocacy work around exactly what is happening and creating awareness as to the impact of some of the actions taken by other stakeholders that have an impact on the SME sector. If that is highlighted loudly enough and consistently enough, perhaps that environment will be favorable for SMEs, so then they can be able to raise capital.
I like that. And you've mentioned something that came up, especially when the dollar was at nearly 140 and people couldn't import, and it became very scary for many entrepreneurs in the country. And one of the terrifying things, especially when you are asking for financing, especially from a bank, is, hey, can I just come as I am? I am not a member of this bank. Let me give you a story. So I was on a date at Two Rivers. And so this gentleman decides that, hey, just give me 1 second. He's an SME. Give me 1 second. I want to dash into Absa really quickly and find out whether, as I am, I can come with my business and maybe put my assets as collateral. Where does an entrepreneur who really needs the money come and can access unsecured financing, noting, yes, there's the interest rates that they need to be aware of, noting, yes, that they may not necessarily be a member of the bank? How do they come to you, and what do you offer them as a possible solution? Elizabeth.
Thank you. For a minute, I wondered how Justice was going to answer that question. But yes, today we are in a different dispensation. Today we know that SMEs are very important. They are the cornerstone of our environment. And to be honest, if we want to grow as a country, we must be able to support them. So that is very clear all the way from government into the private sector. But the question is, how do we support them? And to your question, yes, there is unsecured financing today. There is unsecured financing, but the question is, how prepared are you for that unsecured financing? Absa as a bank has taken a position that we are not just lenders. Today, we pride ourselves in being able to provide financial information, but also non-financial information, which supports the SME to be able to access this funding and use it and be fruitful in that utilization much more efficiently, because some of the challenges we've seen are very many. You can take funding and to be honest, take funding to put in capex when you should have been using it for working capital. So there are very many reasons why it's important that we have the two parts together. And on different forums, we've also partnered with the Gracia Machel Fund as well, to be able to say, for women, how do we prepare them so that they can be able to have conversations with the bank? And the reason why I say this is because, when you come into the bank, we've already prepared you if you have re-engaged with us. To the point I mentioned earlier, we are open to this conversation around preparation. So we'll typically ask you for your statements. We'll typically ask you for whether it's the M-Pesa statements, whether it is your SACCO statements, whether it is your normal bank statements. Show us a view of how your money goes in and out. Now, the reason why it's important that comes through is because then we begin to see whether you have the ability to repay the facility that you're asking for. And the reason why we prepare you for that is because if we don't see the ins and outs of your money, we don't know where your money is going. Because typically SMEs tend to receive money and quickly pay it out without having a conduit where the money is acknowledged, meaning in the bank statements or on the M-Pesa or in the SACCO statements, wherever it is that you actually bank your money. So it is really important that comes through. With that information, you're able to come to the bank. They quickly assess you and say, great, even as a new customer, you are eligible for this amount of money based on your statements. If you require more than the unsecured limit that we normally offer, then we'll be saying typically we can only give you up to 6 million shillings. Anything beyond that, you need to secure it. And this is the kind of security that you need. For people who are buying vehicles, this is a kind of security. Your vehicle becomes a security. If you're looking for a mortgage, this is your security that you can use. If, for instance, you have shares, to the point that you have mentioned earlier on, you can use those shares to secure it. So there are very many ways of being able to get funding. Today, with unsecured funding, there's a possibility. Again, it is important to provide a profile of what it is that you do those financing. Sometimes it is important to be open and honest, because when we have an open and honest conversation, we also profile you in the right space. And should there be a problem with that industry, then we come proactively and say, perhaps it's an opportunity for us to re-engage, restructure the facility and move forward. Case in point, for instance, when we had scenarios where taxes have increased. When taxes increase, we do know repayments become a problem. A lot of tenants, for instance, the real estates were not willing to pay the increased rent. So people who borrowed to provide, to put up buildings are struggling because they can't increase rent. People are not going to pay this. So it's a whole cycle. But the truth is, we're able to reach out to them and say, look, we know the struggles. Come, let's have a conversation about elongating the tenure of your facility. So unsecured facilities is there. I'm hoping that your partner, whoever your date was able, was able to get the information. Unsecured facilities is there more than ever today. I think the question is it the right one for you? Are you clear on what you want to use it for? The terms of engagement are absolutely clear. Figure out your risks. Come, let's have a conversation about mitigating your risks. And then plug into the programs for training, because we at ABSA have a business school and we're willing to be able to support you in training you to make sure that you can use those funds more efficiently, effectively, and hopefully mitigate the risks that we see.
I love that. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. I hope you did all the best. So let's go to the touchy topic about the minority groups accessing financing. And in this case, we're talking about women. There's a statement that Emily has put in the chat. Allow me to read it out. We seem to have a diversified financial ecosystem. However, the solutions are not meeting the women where they are. That is your eligibility criteria, your credit scoring, your price points. So there's an ecosystem problem that is not well adapted to the needs of the SMEs and women in particular. So Melissa, the Women Creating Wealth program tries to solve this problem, but we all understand that it always tips against the women. So I will allow for all of us to share your thoughts, starting with Melissa, then Justus, on how can we make it equitable for women to access financing.
Okay, thank you very much, Emily. And yeah, it's true. I mean, research has been done within the last 5 years by people like the ILO, IFC, and some of the statistics show that as we speak, there's in terms of financing, when you compare access to finance between men and women, there's already about $42 billion gap between how much funding women get and how much funding their male counterparts get. And other statistics show that for venture capital, just for venture capital alone, around the period 2018-2019 that was given to businesses in Africa, only 2% of that went to women. So it's a real issue, it's a real concern, a real gap, and that's why really programs like ours look at a gendered approach, because we've worked with women and we've seen either it could be a gap around knowledge. Where do they access some of these financing options, or even before you get to finance, sometimes it could be these organizations that help these women prepare, and the training organizations, where do they access those ones? So there's definitely a case to focus on women and bring them to the table where they can access some of this financing. And I mean, you'll find statistics also show that in terms of repayment, where you compare, the women entrepreneurs and their male counterparts, the women are very faithful to repay. You know, I think it's just inherent in probably, you know, just being women. But in terms of, you know, I'm just thinking about the question that Emily asked, the gaps in the ecosystem, and maybe some of what can be done is for entrepreneurs to understand that, you know, for the longest time, we've known banking, you know, I mean, funding to be maybe just banking. But even before you get there, because there's a discussion around, say, collateral, how good your cash flows are, you know, are you meeting a minimum revenue every month? Even before you get there, and especially if you're in the very early stages of business, you may not qualify for those types of financing. So it's good to see on this other end, what other options are there. Yeah, sometimes it could be maybe even depending on what you do, getting you to the next level means probably accessing grant funding, or there are people who do, they call it seed. Maybe you're just starting out, they see you have a good idea, you're not yet at the level where your cash flows are stable enough to qualify for a facility from the bank, but there's a lot of potential for you. Yes, for example, these are high net worth individuals. Sorry, I saw my connection was unstable. So I was giving the example of angel investors or high net worth individuals who are ready to take a risk and invest in your business. Yeah. So it's important for entrepreneurs to know, depending on where you are in your business and what you're able to do right now, realistically, what are the financing options available to you? Yeah. And I mean, sometimes it could even be something around, if you're a trader, looking for supplier credit, so that even before, instead of paying the supplier upfront, you know, is it possible to negotiate an arrangement where they give you the goods, maybe the first time you paid cash, or you paid within 30 days, but depending on you know, the engagement or relationship you have with them, that you've proven you're a good partner, can you now negotiate for supplier credit? And then once your customers pay, then you go back and pay your supplier. So it's important to look at what, you know, what options are there depending on where you are as a business. And probably now later, when you're a lot more established, now you can go to financing options that maybe require you to have collateral or require you to have consistent cash flow to be able to satisfy their requirements. And, you know, having said that, I've seen, like, for example, entrepreneurs in agriculture, there are now even banks looking at options where they can provide financing based on the cycle, you know, based on the production cycle in your farm, if you're in primary agriculture. So, I mean, if depending on the business you are, it's good to seek this information, see who the different categories of financiers are, and then you're doing in business. But, you know, just going back to what we do at Women Creating Wealth, you know, we try and as we take the businesses through these different aspects of business coaching, training them on business topics, bringing access to finance linkages. When we do access to market linkages, when we do access to finance, we want to bring on board all categories of financiers, so that it's very clear what each of these financiers are looking for, and then you can approach them now based on your need.
I like that. I mean, maybe just as you could add a little more to that, and especially when you're looking at the knowledge gap in access to financing for women-led businesses, please share a little more about that.
Yeah, Melissa mentioned something interesting on access to funding. You know, very interesting, given that women happen to be those who support society to a large degree. Sorry to say, us men sometimes we are on over weekends, we are always watching football, while ladies are planning on how to empower themselves. But it's really interesting because, yeah, I think it's always important because the moment you empower a woman, you are actually empowering society. And when you empower a man, yes, you do, but of course, you might find he has various ways of spending his money. And when you ask him where the money has gone, then he has to do quite a bit of explanation. But for capital markets, I think what we are looking at is one, that access has to be deliberate. Women have to step up and realize that it's no longer business as usual. A lot of consultations and conversations need to go on for those in decision-making positions before those people realize that perhaps there's something that needs to change in order to ensure at least we come from 2% that Melissa talked about to maybe 10 or 15%. So what I'm trying to say is that we have to move on from talk to action and keeping knocking that door so that ultimately people realize that these statistics are not communicating a good message to society. And that is why for capital markets, I think the issue would be around the interest of this segment of society to go out and explore some of the options that are available, including, for example, issuance of gender bonds. For example, nothing has stopped ABSA from issuing a gender bond in this market, Elizabeth, and raise some 2, 3, 4, 5 billion shillings and be able to distribute it among some of the SMEs that we have in the country. There's also a conversation that we are having, but this is more targeted at SMEs, some of which, of course, would be women-led. We are in the process of establishing what we are calling an SME fund, in which case you would have an entity that is listed raising some capital, but that capital is targeted at being given to SMEs so then they can be able to use those funds and then ultimately repay at some interest that is negotiated. There has always been a conversation around, so what is the cost of capital? And it is very interesting, for example, in our country, if, for example, you want to access M-Shwari, if you look at some of those costs, you realize that it's not that cheap. If I want to send some 200 shillings from where I am to Emily, for example, I'll spend at least 30-something shillings out of the 200. So even with borrowing, of course, when you come to digital channels, it's actually far more expensive than these other channels. So I think it's a question of, first of all, being aware that these alternatives are there. Two, ensuring this information reaches the right people so then they realize there's a crisis we are handling here that actually requires a bit of redress, so that then it doesn't reach what I can call crisis levels for people to realize that a few things need to change. Ultimately, we always have what we call a way of advocating for the same that is progressive, similar to what we did in Parliament with women reps, maybe for some period, so then there's a bit of balance around it. I think there are measures that can be taken, but again, those proposals need to come to the forefront so that people know that there's some innovation or innovations that are coming through that could support some of these segments of society that are otherwise would be left behind if nothing is done.
Absolutely. And maybe, Elizabeth, you could add a little more to that. And I know that ABSA is very, very particular about prioritizing women and access to financing. Share a little more about that. And also that recently there was the Inspire Her campaign that the bank put out. Share a little more about where those opportunities are so that there's many women feeling, hey, I don't know whether I'm confident enough. I don't know whether this is the right time for me. Set the women at ease.
Oh, women, we love you. We love you with all your the shapes and forms and sizes. So, I mean, we've been very intentional at Absa Bank around women because about 5 years ago, when we started this conversation around focusing on the women segment, we did this because every time we called SMEs into a room for a conversation, we found women would come in, but they would come in few and sit at the back and find that they're not engaging as much. The men folk, I know this is normally leadership. You know, you've got energy, drive, you're on the front asking questions from whichever end. So the women tended to sit at the back, despite the fact that they ran actually very good businesses, strong businesses. So we found more and more, the more we invite, the less they are, and that is just the domain. So we decided, let us go out and first and foremost ask women, what is it that they're looking for? What is it that they need from an organization such as a bank? And they came up with 4 things fundamentally. They were asking for, can we have access to mentoring and coaching? Because that is really important for us. Can we have our exclusive meetings where we meet, have conversations, talk to us, educate us, edify us, empower us? Number 2, they said, can we have access to networking? Networking would speak to bringing people from different environments, different industries. Come and talk to us. Give us that information also. Provide us with an environment where we can see where we're going to. We see other people's mistakes. Let's not make the same mistakes. Networking became a fundamental piece of the feedback they gave us. The third one, they said, give us access to markets. Because yes, we have goods and services, but we want access to markets. And the fourth one was access to financing, sustainable financing, not just any financing, sustainable financing. So our proposal or our proposition at the bank, which we call Absa She Proposition, really spoke to making sure that we can provide the 4 pillars together with partners, because we are not experts in those fields. We cannot purport to provide coaching and mentoring. We are bankers. So we had to find partners to be able to support us in being able to do that. We had to find partners to provide markets for women, partners to provide coaching and mentoring. And then, of course, we would then provide the financing. But even in that financing, because we are very strict on how we, how we finance. For instance, we do know women, do not have. I think that the statistics show that only 10% of women in Kenya have title deeds in their name. So security was then not going to be, something that they put on the table ordinarily. So we found partners. Today we pride ourselves in finding partners such as Africa Guarantee Fund to support us in guaranteeing the women, to enable us then go ahead and lend to them. And then of course government also had their scheme as well to support women and SMEs to be able to lend to borrow from the banks. So why do I say this then? So some of the things that we do regularly is some of the creative things that we do is the Inspire Me conference, which was a conference for women. And women came in from different areas of Africa. We had about 10 countries in Africa. Then we also invited countries, representatives from Switzerland and also in the UK. And these are buyers who are coming into Kenya. And women came in to be able to, to be inspired and also to inspire, and to be able to showcase what are the things that they're able to do, talk about the issues that they had. And we had fantastic speakers from government and all, the areas of development in Kenya. And women came out feeling that, we matter, because our tagline is your story matters. Women don't tell their stories often enough. So it is an opportunity for women to also tell their stories, how they found ecosystems that work for them. So the question that I think Emily asked, the lady Emily on the platform asked earlier on, how do I find an ecosystem that can support me? Where are those women finding these opportunities that can guide me, support me, and educate me on how to land these opportunities? How do I become strong enough to put my proposal up and gather, a team around me to be able to move into an ecosystem and negotiate? And we therefore use that platform also to influence, some of the key corporate customers in the environment in Kenya, to say women are capable, give them the opportunity. We are willing to support them from a funding perspective, give them those LPOs, give them those contracts. We are willing to support them, and we are also training them together with our partners to ensure that they're ready and able to deliver for you. So it was wonderful. We had about 700 women in the room for 2 days. Each day it was house full. And then we had 12,000 women online listening. So it's a powerful, it was a powerful movement. I can assure you the different countries that we represented in as Africa from an APSA perspective are also looking to do the same, to ensure that we can support women across the African continent, because the truth is we can sit at the table and make a difference and be impactful.
I love it. I see that Frida must have been in the room because she says it was electric. And we definitely must celebrate Justus as one of the He for She campaigners.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Justus. Really appreciate you on behalf of the many women who are looking to access financing. I see that time has really moved. We have about 7 minutes to the top of the hour, but I would love to invite any questions, comments, and feedback from our audience that can help. If you haven't touched on any part of the discussion, please feel free to share your questions as we continue to wind up on this discussion. And one of the things that is standing out a lot through this conversation is the level of preparedness that entrepreneurs, whichever status you are, whether you are just starting out, whether you have just received your certification from KRA that you're now an entrepreneur, there are so many things that a business must consider when you are starting out. Where are you starting from? What are the solutions you're providing? What are some of the areas that you can explore as means of financing? So as we go towards a close, maybe share a piece of advice that you would want many entrepreneurs to know, that as they come to you, maybe they're even thinking, this is a business that I want to start, and then in 5 years I close and I want to move on. Because we've seen statistics that businesses sometimes don't even get to their 5th year. So there are two areas here. There's one that you want to really progress your business and see it having legacy of 100 years. And then there's also the other entrepreneur who's thinking, me, I just want to sell clothes for 5 years and then I'm done. So from starting with Melissa, what piece of advice would you give to a business so that they are able to stand the test of time?
Okay, thank you very much, Emily. I mean, there's so many things to say around that, but I think I will focus probably more around just on what comes to mind and the experience we've had with businesses as we've worked with them, particularly through our program. So I think one of the first commitments that would be important for a business to do is the need to formalize your business. Yeah. Sometimes when we start with businesses, maybe they haven't registered, and one of the targets, haven't registered the business formally, whether as a sole proprietor, a partnership, a limited liability company. So one of the goals we have that by the end of the program, they must register. There's an aspect of formalizing your business, even as we talk about you moving to the next level to meet, let's say, financiers. Today we are talking about access to capital for businesses, and I'll assure you that for you to qualify for many of these financing options we've talked about or mentioned today, there needs to be formalization. Yeah. And one of the other things is, I think the need for the business to commit to the work that's required. Elizabeth has talked about the training programs they have for their businesses, and that aspect is bringing on that intermediary even before you meet the needs of the financier. So whatever it is you need to do when you go into let's say a training program, and the consultants or people the team you're working with highlight certain areas that you need to address or certain gaps you need to address, then please do the work, because that is really laying the foundation for what you're proposing, that how does this business survive for the next 3 to 5 years. The basics have to be right. And some of those basics, apart from formalization, include, there's always that one recommendation: please separate your personal and business finances. Please have a way to record your transactions. Even if you can't afford an accountant full-time, can you outsource that? Maybe once a week or once a month, depending on the number of transactions you have. So those basics that are pointed out in the very beginning always go a long way to help a business. And sometimes it could be even the market that you're targeting. Sometimes we start a business because maybe a friend or another entrepreneur was featured and we thought, wow, what a great idea. Let me start doing it. But have we done the homework? Do we have the capacity to start on maybe producing this product or offering this service? What does it take? So I think going back to those basics of just doing the work that's required, learning your business inside out, learning the transaction cycles of your business, because even when you go to the bank, they will ask you, how many days does it take for you to sell to your customer? How many days do they take to pay you back? How many days does it take if you're shipping a product, let's say from abroad? How many days does it take you? So do you even understand that cycle, so that when you're looking for financing and negotiating maybe a repayment period, you've established that it's 3 or 6 months, So yeah, I would say formalizing and being ready to do the work or close the gaps that have been highlighted, especially if you join, let's say, a program that's helping you upskill and get to the next level.
Thank you so much. And you've raised a very interesting topic, and that circles around compliance issues and regulatory issues. And this maybe is a question that Lucy may be alluding to, and these questions go to Justus. So Justus, Lucy is asking, when investment companies say they are CMA regulated, what exactly does that mean? And after the Cyton saga, businesses are afraid of putting their surplus in these institutions. So tell us a little bit about compliance issues and how they can secure a startup from what had happened with the Cyton saga, for instance.
All right, thanks, Emily. I think just to start with, I don't think we have games that don't have rules. Yeah, so every game has got to have some rules of play. So then when there's unfairness, somebody can blow the whistle and say there's something wrong here that requires to be addressed. And that's precisely why you require a regulator. A regulator is not there to stop every evil that would happen, because it's not humanly possible. Because you see, usually the market is a bit ahead of the regulator, because innovation has been encouraged. People have to be allowed to experiment. A lot of times when they experiment, by the time the regulator comes in, you would find that a few things have gone wrong. So the role of the regulator is more of signaling and ensuring that people, generally speaking, are playing by the rules that have been established. And just to also inform you that the challenges that we are having within, we had within the capital market sector with Cyton are not unique. If you look at the banking sector, for example, we've had a number of banks that have had challenges. Imperial Bank, you have Chase Bank. Even within the insurance sector, we have Blue Shield, which is our neighbor here. I can go on and on. So there's no question about it that every market has what? A mad person, right? So you'll always have people who want to play not by the rules, but their own way of doing things, which is quite unfortunate, but it is very hard to get rid of them completely. So what usually happens, and I have to just be honest with you, in Kenya, sometimes our courts surprise me because they rule this way, they rule another way, they confuse you until you don't even know what you need to do. And I think we have a myriad of cases we've had with the latest one being, I think, yesterday around some issues. They rule, and then immediately after the ruling actually goes, I just hope there's no lawyer in the room. Yeah, but that is the reality of things. So in the case of Cyton, the authority has taken certain actions. Of course, Cyton was regulated by CMA, certain elements of Cyton. There are others that came up that usually, because we are playing by the rules, regulations are a bit loose in terms of how to support innovation. And, part of that is what is usually taken advantage of. But generally speaking, when a product is regulated or an entity is regulated, you are safer with it than when you're dealing with an unregulated space. There's no doubt about it. The issue or question would be, sometimes you get innovations going far ahead of regulation. And I'll give you an example of cryptocurrency, for example. There are a number of people who have invested in cryptos. Now, some have made money, but some have lost quite some amount to it. So the question is, like in Kenya, as it stands, there is no regulator for cryptos. And talk about rules, so you would find there's an international market. There could be some loose rules around the same. But ultimately, if there's no regulation, of course, you're on your own, and if you lose, it is usually very hard for you to nail down someone and say, so what happened here? So in a regulated environment, it's possible for the regulator to say, now, stop for a moment. Who have we licensed to do this? Who are the key personnel? What are the risks they are highlighted? Are they within reason? If not, what punishment do we give? So for Cyton, I think there are certain elements that are within, that are in courts. There are certain penalties that that have been effected against them, and that, as the person who asked the question, I think it's Lucy. When that happens, of course, you get scared about the market. But then again, if you get so very scared, then of course you will not be able to make money, because with business, you have to take that risk for you to be able to make a return on investment. Taking you back to the slide of question around how do I use money to make more money? Yeah. So that has to come in, and at all times, whether it's an angel investor or within capital markets, or what Gracia, Michelle, and Melissa's institution is doing, ultimately, the question is around how do you ensure that reasonably you're taking measures to ensure that some of those issues that should not be falling through the cracks actually don't. It doesn't mean that you're going to stop everything, because if you stop everything, again, people will say you are over-regulating, which will again scare people from the market. So there's a delicate balancing act here, and that is what the regulator always tries to do. Bottom of it all, you are encouraged to come to capital markets at any given point in time. I think the issue is on how much engagement have you had, how much awareness do you have, so that even as you get into that space, your level of knowledge is fairly good, such that people don't take advantage of it.
I love that. Elizabeth, you may have additional thoughts to the same.
Look, Justice says quite a bit. There is an opportunity for us to learn. There is an opportunity for us to engage. There is an opportunity for us to partner. It doesn't just speak to the corporates, it speaks to SMEs, it speaks to startups. I think today at Absa Bank, we are open in terms of being able to engage on all those levels to ensure that SMEs, startups have a solid opportunity for us to be able to have businesses that transcend time. To the earlier question that you asked, Emily, I always ask business people and SMEs, when they're coming to the bank or they want to grow or start a business, be very clear on what your business needs to achieve for you. Is it a short-term business, to the question to the statement you made, or is it a long-term business? A lot of the times, our customers come in with businesses that are named after them. So there's a lot of Justice and Sons. Today I'm saying it's Elizabeth and Daughters. And there's businesses that are, an amalgamation of your name. So it would be Elizawa, because, this is a name that you've started a business, over a long time. So most of the time, the businesses are not meant to fail. That is not the intention. Even if at the very worst, you have to sell your business, you'll be selling a business with your name and it goes into perpetuity. Make sure that your business has the strong pillars, the strong foundation for it to be able to transcend time. But the truth of the matter is, you don't learn at the beginning only. Learning continues through the whole period so that you can consistently edify your business, support your business, grow your business, challenge your business, make sure you're mitigating the risks of your business. Otherwise, you're actually planning to fail if you don't have a plan. And today, a lot of banks, ABSA included, we're very big on ensuring that we can enable the SMEs, the startups, the women in business to ensure that they have a better opportunity to run businesses that can transcend time and be able to invest, because investments is an opportunity. The risks are there, but if you have a mitigated plan of being able to manage those risks, absolutely. I think it's also important to say that do not fear asking questions. I think a lot of people say, when you come into the bank, or they will laugh at you. There's no laughing in the bank. Or any other organization. We want to be able to support you to ensure that you can drive your business to the next level. So please open your minds, come in, let's have a conversation, engage in the different forums that we have. I'm also looking, just as I probably reach out to you, because I can see there's a link there. We need to make sure that we have more people investing in your area so that we can then be able to, make the kind of returns that we want to make for the different organizations. But it's an opportunity for us to partner in different ways to ensure that SMEs are not fearful, but also operate within giving Caesar what is Caesar's. Because I always say there's no shortcuts to these measures. When you do shortcut business, you fear when you hear KRAs on your street, you're shutting your shop and running. But the truth is, if you have a firm foundation on how to engage with them, how to challenge them, how to give them information, I think we'll be on the right path. So I think for me, my short to them would be, if you want to walk fast, you can walk alone. But if you want to walk a far distance, you have to work with others, partner, engage, and let's see how to support each other, move forward.
I love that. And I see that we are just slightly above time. Thank you so much to all 35 of the audience members joining us. We are now on the concluding statement, starting with Elizabeth.
I would say, Emily, it has been an engaging conversation. The truth of the matter, the opportunities are there. Do not be fearful as an organization, as a startup, as an SME. Make sure that you can reach out to be supported. There are a lot of opportunities today that allow us to interact with yourselves, so that you can be able to ask questions and have the firm foundation that I mentioned earlier in being able to run your business. ABSA Bank is, speaks about the purpose of empowering Africa's tomorrow together, one story at a time. It's also an opportunity for us and SMEs together to tell our stories. And it should be success stories, and we want to support the success stories. But even if you should have a fall or you should struggle, do not think that these successful businesses haven't had those challenges. They all have. But the question is, how do you step up? How do you stand up and move forward? So my encouragement is, let's move forward, let's engage. I'm happy to take on questions, even after this, to share my email so that we can be able to walk forward in making sure that you have a stable business to manage. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And thank you also to our audience on LinkedIn and on YouTube for tuning in this whole time. Let us hear from Melissa on her final takeaways.
Thank you very much, Emily. It's been a pleasure and a great opportunity to just engage in this discussion on financing and access to capital for startups. And I'd just like to go back and just reiterate some, maybe one or two points that we've raised. As you prepare to go out and look for funding, see that you're ready to access that funding. You've prepared yourself. You have anticipated the questions that the financier will ask, and just out of the information we are sharing today, that you have identified the right financier based on where you are in your business. And I think is also to encourage the entrepreneurs that sometimes, it looks like it's an uphill task, looking for these financiers, succeeding in getting the funds. But, we'd like to encourage you that sometimes even as you seek to get the right funder, it's about how well matched your needs are to what they are providing or the products that they're providing. So if you don't qualify for that one, seek out another one. And you even as your business grows and as you do what you need to do to meet the financiers requirements, that financing will come. And I think it's also important to say that sometimes for business, it's not always about money. Sometimes it could be just going back to your business and looking at certain aspects. Maybe it's the way your operations are set up, or it's certain systems that you need to put certain systems in place. Maybe you're in a production facility. So even as you go out to look for financing, go back to the business and see, is it just about the money, or are there things in the business that I need to be correcting or to be closing gaps around? And then now when the financing comes, then it meets the financing needs you have. And also, when you're clear on your funding needs, when you're clear on how much you want and what you want to use it for and use it properly, it actually sets you up to get even more funding or get, different categories of funders to come and work with you because they're happy about your success and they want to go on with you to the next level. So for any entrepreneurs in the meeting, mine is to wish you the best, even in your quests for funding. Make sure you're ready, make sure you know what the money is for, how you're going to use it. Thank you so much.
Last but certainly not least, our he for she ambassador, Justus.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. I think the key point we are taking away is one, don't feel drive for fear that you might be rejected. I mean, you analyze what is the worst that can happen to you if you try. And I think that is where you need to start from as an entrepreneur. So ultimately you try, you fail, there's always next time to try again until you actually are able to succeed. Second point I wanted to mention is I think there's a lot of demystification we need to do about securities markets, shares and capital markets. Very important that I think it's a question of trying to read and getting the knowledge so that you're able to understand how these markets work. You will actually be surprised as to how easily it would be for you to make a return on investment. I think it's very important to start somewhere. And there has been a bit of bias towards things like land, plots somewhere or buildings as what one could call assets. You can also have bonds and shares as part of your assets, and it is very possible. The advantage of it is that nobody will follow you once you've withdrawn some amount from a bank, 4 or 5 million, into a car. It's very easy for people to follow you. But when you have shares in a CDSC, it's usually not easy for people to know that you have 5 million worth of shares somewhere. So it's important to appreciate this. Then also, I think it would be nice for us as capital markets support you, even in terms of blowing your own trumpet as stakeholders in this space. If you wait for people to talk on your behalf, I think you're going to wait for quite a long time. So it's important for you to sustain this discussion, ensure that the right people are listening to the message you are delivering. Ultimately, some action will come through. Then lastly, just make sure that you don't put all your eggs in one basket. I think it's an old adage that needs to be appreciated, that you should spread either when you are an investor or somebody who wants to raise capital. Don't just focus on one source. Also, when investing, don't just invest in one asset. It's good to diversify so that in case this asset does not perform, you have this other one that will perform better than what you may have anticipated. Otherwise, mine is to thank everybody for this session. I think let's continue the discussion, but more importantly, let's learn and read more so then we can explore those options and be able to support our economy.
I love that. Thank you all so much, ladies and gentlemen. A final round of applause. we had Melissa Mwiti from the Grassa Machel Trust. We had Elizabeth Wasuna, Business Banking Director at ABSA, and Justus Agoti, the Senior Manager Market Depending at the Capital Markets Authority. Such an insightful time that we have had on how to access financing. Do not be afraid. Do not feel like there's something wrong with your business. Go out there. There are so many opportunities that you can explore, but do your homework. Get ready with a pitch deck, and there is a lot more in store for your business. It has been a great pleasure. So you also thank me, ladies and gentlemen. You this tough crowd. Thank you, thank you. Thank you so much to the SME Founders Association for this wonderful opportunity as I hand it back to our convener, Josephine Osumo.
Wow. Thank you so much, Emily. Thank you, all our participants. We're still at 30 on the Zoom room. I know we have more in LinkedIn and also on YouTube. We will be winding up in a few, but before we do that, it is just fitting that we acknowledge these learning labs have been brought to us courtesy of ASEP and SME Founders Association. I remember I mentioned at the beginning that the ASEP Summit and Awards are an initiative spearheaded by Set Up a Startup. I will come to that and I will tell you more about about next week's program. But before I do that, let me call upon Soni Anangasa to tell us more about SME Founders Association, who have been our host for these editions of the Learning Labs. Soni, over to you.
Thank you so much. What a session. It has really been so informative. A big thanks to the panelists, the moderator. And I can say in each and every lab that we have had, we have really learned a lot. We've gotten so much feedback, so many people inquiring in how we can join SME Founders. And it's important for you to not walk alone and at least start off joining one of the association. So who is SME Founders and what are we all about? I'd like to share. Okay, I cannot share. Maybe somebody can give me the rights. But as we still wait for that, I think I will just slowly go through who we are and what we do. So who is SME Founders Association? We've been around for a couple of years, around 9 years. And the main issue or the main thing we do in terms of supporting entrepreneurs is to help connect them to money, markets, and mentors. And I think we have seen throughout all these sessions, the aspect of learning from the partners that we have and learning from the different people who have come together to give us information. So information is power, but as we always say, it can only be powerful if you're able to take in what you learn and apply it in your day-to-day. So joining SME Founders, what would that entail? Once you make the decision to be part of the network, you come in based on your needs by deciding on which particular way you want to partner with us. So with as little as 5,000 Kenya shillings, you can be able to join as a partner. And we have different packages based on how you want to come in and your business needs. So the first step that you come into is you join the network as a partner. And within the partnership, you are able to get several packages. Let me see whether I can share right now. Yeah. All right, so let me just slowly walk you through that. So once you come in and become part of the SME Founders community, you are able to get a pool of mentors who will be able to help you in terms of what your business needs. You will have the opportunity to join the other communities or the other programs that we have that include our Founders Profit Academy. That is a learning platform that is run by the founders, for founders. We also have a Catalyst program that just helps you in terms of a revolving fund that will help you to have peer loans. We also have within that particular community what we call business dialogues. That is purely a Toastmasters club, but now tailored to business people. You're able to network in that particular forum, and you're also able to learn how to communicate better, how to be able to sell your business better. We also have what we call the Young Global Workforce Apprenticeship Program, which is mostly for the youth. And this is just helping to be able to introduce the youth into entrepreneurship so that they may be able to take advantage of the opportunities that are available for them. Without much ado, I will talk about how you can be able to join us. I will post this particular link onto the chat, and the call is kindly fill that form. Let us know your name, your business, what your business needs, and then we can pick up the process of onboarding from there. So without much more ado, I think I will give back the program to Josephine. So kindly please don't forget to get into the chat and click on that link so that you can be able to join us. Karibu sana. Over to you, Josephine.
Thank you so much, Sonny. There's a poll that has been launched, and this is just so that we can know how to get better in bringing these learning lab sessions to you. So please fill in that poll, and as you continue to do that, let me tell you about ASEB assets, because that is what I said I was going to give. So a promise is a debt. I hope soon you have put the link. Somebody is waiting for it. So please put the link so that they can click on it and just connect. So next week, we come to the close of these learning labs, and we will be discussing inclusive entrepreneurship, the future of Africa's startup ecosystem. It will be a vibrant, much longer discussion because we will be incorporating the names of those who have been nominated to represent Kenya at the award ceremony in Ghana later on in the year. We will have 3 speakers and 3 panelists. Let me just share my screen so that you see who we will have in place. Let me know once you can see my screen.
We can see your screen.
All right,
Just
thank you.
Yeah.
So our keynote speakers will be Kevin Ayaba, who is the founder of ASEB, that is Africa Startup Ecosystem Builders, Velona Okech, who is from SME Founders Association as the executive director. We will have Olga Oyer, a global communities country team lead and project director at USAID Clear Plus. We spoke to Clear Plus at the very first ASEB Learning Lab on the 1st of August. So if you remember that meeting, they were there. Our panelists will be Koresha Abdullahi from Institute of Human Resource Management. She's the executive director. We have Pamela Kaburu, who will be talking to us about worker cooperatives. Worker cooperatives was also discussed at the very first meeting, and she's the monitoring evaluation specialist, Global Communities, USAID Clear Plus. And we have Joseph Kimotho from Equity Foundation, the General Manager, Enterprise Development and Access to Finance. Our moderators will be Vivian Odo-Mike-Eze, who is the founder and CEO of Elogi Consulting, and Edwin Moindi, the MD for Moindi Consulting. You do not want to miss this. Okay, why don't you want to miss this? As I said earlier, ASEB awards are not just something that came up out of the blue. They were there for a reason, and they lie at the core of ASEB, which is dedicated to recognizing and celebrating exceptional contributions to ecosystem building. So a key element of the summit will be the awards that honor the unsung heroes who have significantly advanced entrepreneurship, strengthened startup ecosystems across Africa. They will highlight individuals and/or organizations that have shown remarkable dedication, innovation, and impact in their ecosystem building efforts. So when we celebrate these achievements, we want to inspire and motivate others to excel in the same space. And in so doing, we hope that, or ASEB hopes, so when I say we are talking about ASEB, hopes to drive the growth and success of entrepreneurship in Africa. So ASEB is not merely an annual event. If you think it's annual, so let me wait next year. No, throughout the year, there are things that are happening. ASEB is a vibrant platform featuring workshops, breakout sessions, collaborative activities, where we prioritize active participant engagement. We create an environment where attendees can develop tools, resources, and innovative strategies to better support entrepreneurs and innovators through interactive sessions and peer-to-peer learning. So this summit fosters exchange of ideas, sharing of best practices, and collaboration to build resilient ecosystems that empower and uplift communities. If you missed the last sessions and you were just for this one today, that statement has been proven true. So for next week, we are having a longer session. We are going to wrap up. We are going to have keynote speakers. We are going to have panel discussions. And I hope to see all of you next week. Till then, it has been my absolute pleasure to just learn from our panelists, to listen to Emily lead that conversation. And I hope you too, dear audience, in Zoom, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn, have learned something significant that hopefully will move you that step closer to where you want to go. Now then, a round of applause for everyone who has been here, and I hope to see you next week at the same time, 11:30 a.m. Have a good day, everyone, and God bless.